We're taking you guys to a brand new map in this Cosmonarchy Brood War replay, match, whatever you want to call it. Karma is a bitch. So, what we have here is a map called Hellstone by the Shambler, who is playing as a random player and has rolled Terran. He's the white Terran on the left-hand side. Meanwhile, we have the light olive Zerg, that's neblime. So this is actually just another set featuring these two players. This will be a 5-game set. I won't be assuming that it goes back and forth like it's, you know, best of 5 or whatever, and it goes to all 5 games. I have no idea what we're going to see here, but yeah, you'll just see how that one goes out. I think in the future, for like the next game or something, I'll start adding like a tracker that says, you know, who's got how many wins or whatever, and maybe I can just throw that up here by the names, but something to help people follow along as we're getting into things. Thanks for checking out some classic Cosmonarchy Brood War action. I say classic as if it's been around for a long time, but it's a mod for a classic game, so does that make it classic by, you know, extension or something? I'm not 100% sure. So they're talking a little bit about the map and its current state. This map has received changes, I believe, after this game or some games on it in general. And yeah, generally speaking, neblime is just going to be doing some talking while he's helping him out. Talking about map balance and such. Obviously, we have been undergoing some pretty significant changes in CMBW lately, so that is going to be something to keep track of. Obviously, this is still the update where we have the Hydra Den and whatnot. Now, this isn't the latest version, so as of right now, you can play a game, for example, where if you happen to go up against late-game Terran, the Hippogriff has a different anti-air weapon than it does have an anti-ground weapon, and that is a single-target anti-air weapon, so you can overwhelm them in that case with air units. We'll see if Shambler was paying attention to that Droleth, because it was able to burrow. Doesn't look like that's the case, though. As he continues to pump out some workers, keeping parity with neblime. Now, he should be aware that neblime likes to go the in-base Hatcherosk into, you know, instantaneous setup. So, like, this is something that, you know, especially on a map he's not familiar with, he's probably going to play it a little bit safer and expand a little bit later into the game. And, you know, your income is a bit slower than in Starcraft 1. Maybe not a bit, maybe it's significantly slower at the early stages of the game. But, you know, we counteract that by you being able to harvest gas from the get-go, which actually does slow down your mineral income a bit, which is one of the reasons why his Hatcherosk is, you know, going to be a little bit delayed here. And it will be an anchor to the right-hand side of the Ministry, blocking add-ons that, of course, can be lifted off in the future, if that is something that Shambler wants. But he's actually saved all of his gas so far, and hasn't spent a single bit. He's now queued up a Cyprian, so that is indeed changed, and we have a Skither Corps rallying to the other side for a scout. The Droleth returns after burrowing, and we even have Mason attacking the... Well, yeah, he's attacking the middle Ministry. I don't know if that really matters, but I suppose that Mason... I mean, I don't know, that Mason could be harvesting resources, so it feels to me like that's kind of a mistake by Shambler, but maybe he's got like some specific idea in mind. Obviously, it will go down to the Skither Corps here. Wasn't any reaction from Shambleman, so we'll see what he wants to do. He does have 2 Cyprians on the anchor, so that will obviously dissuade the Skither Corps from doing too much, and so too will these 5 Mavericks. If they were stimmed, they would have killed that, but the reaction time is not there for Monsieur Shambler. He is producing some Hurricanes and is starting to head over here, presumably to take advantage of this quicker rotation. However, his Hurricane is actually, you know, it steps a little bit forward and does get slapped. Every little bit of damage matters here because there are no Clerics out yet, no Vestries here, which allow the Stockades to train those. And obviously this last Ministry will go down. There is an Ovaleth spotting, which is kind of funny. We haven't seen that in a while. And yeah, the Skither Corps is just going to take pot shots. Neblime realizes at this point, if he can just get some more hits off of these, soften up some of the Hurricanes so that they can't tank for the Mavericks, that makes this Bioforce a lot less scary. But, you know, he only has 3 Hydras. He does have more on the way, so the longer it takes Shambler to really do much here, the harder it's going to be. Actually, you know, it feels like it was really impactful for him that he didn't end up charging forward with a stim to kill that Skither Corps to begin with. And now, at this point, the Hurricanes can't really get to the point where they can attack the Hydras. They do start to debuff them. They rend out all of the armor, obviously, when they do that. And now, obviously, all their splash went to the Hydras instead of dealing with the Droleths. It's a little bit messy. And obviously, every larva matters here, but only killing 2 workers, 3 workers. Okay, at the very end, he does salvage himself a little bit, but obviously at this point, Neblime's already got a Hatcherosk, and this was not scouted by Shambler. He could have theoretically, you know, went back here, you know, positioned his Mavericks behind the Hatcherosk, and the same for the Hurricanes, but it didn't end up happening. So back in, he springs into action, building out a whole host of units and such. dropping extra stockades for production, and dropping a star pad. And we'll see how long it takes neblime to saturate his base over there. I think at this point, we're thinking about, we've got, 18 workers here, because one of them was heading out for a structure, it looks like. So we have 18 workers. The way that you want to think about the worker allocation here is that once you have 2 workers to a patch, it's less efficient to continue saturating. So that's how saturation works in CMBW relative to Brood War by comparison. So worker efficiency is a bit easier on one base. And that means that when you have, what is this? This is actually a lot of minerals. This is 9 mineral nodes, it looks like. So that means that actually 18 is the perfect amount for minerals, but he's also harvesting some gas, right? So actually it looks like if he really wants it, he needs 3 more on minerals, 4 more on minerals, and then he can start to transfer workers, and then it would make sense for efficiency's sake. But either way, it doesn't look like that's something that he has to worry about too much right now. It is pretty handy to be able to control click and see exactly how many workers you have. You can see now he's really drolled up quite heavily, getting up to 26. At this point, it would definitely make more sense to start transferring the workers over because you got so many minerals over here. In fact, this base has 10 mineral nodes, so very unconventional amounts of resources available because normally you would see 8 or 7. In this case, we have 9 in the main, 10 in that particular base here, and I don't know about the other spots. So yeah, this is 9 over here as well. So it's a lot, and it does mean that you can spike up on 2 bases or whatever a little bit better. I would actually say 9 in the main is probably pretty bad for expectations of how much stuff you can get off on one base. It may be bad is the wrong word, but it definitely is different. And so you're going to have to realize that as you're sort of moving around and see what you can do. So we do have a queued order there. The Skither Corps is going to go ahead and scout the top half of the map and just spot out if whether Shambler's expanded or not. He does have a ministry being built in his base, so there is that. And yeah, he's just going to continue making some units out of the stockades. He does have another squad over here. And hey, he's right to try to poke in because he remembers that game on Infinite Velocity where neblime basically didn't build any workers. This could be pretty, or anything but workers, I should say. This could be pretty bad. He's got the 2 Izira cores, but they're actually out of position, and they just instantly end up getting melted. So this could be an end of the game really, really quickly here. Lots of kill pressure available. What is in the eggs? He's got 2 Izira cores in his natural. Yeah, I think this might actually be game. I mean, if he's not careful. Maybe he can just focus down the Cyprians. The Hydras do get a little bit better versus the Mavericks in the context of the Huracan's not being there to rend armor. And actually the same is true for the Izira cores, right? The Izira cores obviously have 2 armor, so that's going to be really quite effective. But you can see all of these workers end up going down. We're back down to basically even workers. And that sounds like, oh, it's not too bad. No, it's actually quite poor for neblime because he now needs to really be wary of further aggression from Shambler. Again, Shambler can definitely do some pretty good damage. Oh, look at this. The Izira core getting stopped. And there you go. Forcing a burrow at the last end. Every little bit of worker damage helps. You're now going to see some static defense. That's going to be even more of a committal. Okay, neblime's banking gas. He's about 400 gas away from being able, or 300 gas away from being able to successfully start teching up. And meanwhile, obviously, Shambler is pretty far from that because he's continued to build units and he hasn't really heavily focused on getting gas, and he's only now landing his expansion. He's adding a 3rd base that he can float off probably to the south down here. It's going to be a while before he can start adding more Masons in different places. This idle one over here, continuing to build only infantry. He has a star pad, but I don't see any air units. So that feels a bit weird. He could definitely go for a drop. Oh, he did have a Wraith over here for scouting, so I changed my tune there. But only 1 circuit, and again, no combat units. Neblime is just going to be like, okay, I'm going to keep building, workers only pretty much, and, getting my economy back online. And I guess maybe Neblime is thinking to himself that he can just build some more, maybe take another base up here in the top right, as you saw just there for a moment. Units waypoint list is full, by the way. And this printing out in a replay or in witness mode or whatever I think it only happens in a replay. We can fix that now that we know that it actually happens. The same thing is actually true for not enough energy when you have a spellcaster, and I don't know why that kind of thing happens. But yeah, over here the Skither Corps obviously is going to go ahead and get zoned away by the Watchdog, not really accomplishing too much there, maybe pulling Shambler's forces away. But this Obelisk does spot the army move out over here, so there should be some kind of response from neblime. But again, he has so few military units. The guy's got 8 military units total, and they're split between 2 different bases at this point. And obviously one of them is that wounded Skither Corps up in the top. So I think I actually don't know. I think maybe Oveleths count towards that, right? He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I think Oveleths do count towards that. So this circuit is just going to get instantaneously dove on. All of these workers in the natural base are going to just get melted pretty soon. Huracans are starting to fall, and this circuit was allowed to finish. And some of these forces were spent, attacking the Hydras down here. They will go ahead and mop up the Izira cores, of course. But obviously at this point you have to worry about, you know, where can you realistically attack to with this small squad of units. You might be able to, you know, guide your way up here, hug that left-hand side there underneath the geyser, and maybe try to deny mining and stuff. He did kill a lot of workers again, but at this point, you know, I'm not really sure that it was as effective as he really wanted it to be. We do have a ministry with a lodestone add-on. He can garrison that, and obviously, aside from that, it'll provide detection, so it's like anti-Lakizalisk versus Zerg, pretty much. Nothing else that you're really going to write home about. He does have his Wraith continuing to scout and spot, and definitely makes some sense, but the Iral Iris is on the way, and it's nearly complete, as a matter of fact. Whereas, on the other side, Shambler does have a bit of gas float, but for the most part, is just adding more and more stockades, right? He's got, with 7 stockades, his 7th one finishing just now. Okay, he can keep on producing, but really, I think what he's missing the most is, ironically, he's missing Harakans. If he had more Ahmeds on the front line and they were able to stay alive longer, maybe if he had some clerics or shamans with the army, that could also help. I don't know, man. It could definitely have been a different fight, but it felt like he lacked the sustain and he lacked the frontline meat to really do too much. And now the Hydras are even going to go ahead, and they're not even going to take a single loss despite the you know, the way that stuff was set up. And now we have tier 2 anti-surface cells. We've got the Scorchrith Cesients up. That's obviously going to be super powerful versus Bio. They do have a secondary attack if the enemy is in a small area or whatever. So basically, if you attacked like this Hydra, if there was a Droleth nearby, a secondary attack would hit it for half damage. So you deal 40 damage to the front target and then 20 damage to the subsequent target. It's very, very potent as a defensive cell. Obviously expensive because you have to mutate it on top of the default Scorchrith, but, you know, still very powerful. So going from, you know, for all of these advanced defenses is allowing neblime to potentially come into the game a little bit better. He has his Back to the Swamp already. That's going to allow him to get Bactylisks, most notably, but also, you know, eventually Vithrilisks if he wants versus air, or Tetzoricors if he wants more crowd control versus these frontline units. So there is an Atlas on the way, but it's been put down after the eye roll was already done for maybe a minute or so. That's definitely a very late Atlas at this stage of the game. Well, maybe not very late. You know, again, it's probably like 2 minutes off or something compared to what neblime was able to do. But I do feel like, you know, if Shambler gets any other race, or if he just builds a couple of additional units, he's actually going to be able to do a lot more. Now, unfortunately, he's unloading to the right-hand side here with all these Ahmeds, and he's doing so where there's Bactylisks already. The Ahmeds are actually getting blocked a little bit here. That was almost like perfection, honestly. And, you know, one of the Bactylisks does go down despite all of that. But obviously, the only like 2 workers ended up dying just because they were burrowed in the correct spots. I almost feel like he could have had less worker deaths if he had gone a different approach and just kept like a couple workers up or something. But, you know, either way, he almost had like the perfect block with his Hydralisk mutating into a Bactylisk. That's like what you would see with Hydras turning into lurkers in stock Starcraft on ramps or whatever. You know, obviously it doesn't have like absurd armor, so it's not quite the same level of power. And Shambler's being very sloppy, not actually evacuating that Trojan. That's definitely a misplay, you could say. Adding a 4th base ministry and starting to add fulcrums as well. Doesn't have any other add-ons. He has added a lodestone. Remember, these provide detection as well as offering the ability for you to load up units into them. Did he end up garrisoning this? Yeah, he has 2 Cyprians in that, so that's kind of neat. Nothing in here yet, but the 4 Mavericks are standing by. Eventually they'll be thrown in there if that base does come under attack. And looks like Shambler is complaining about his own map. Classic. And I mean, I guess it can make sense if you're not really judicious about how you check stuff out. That can be quite a problem. Now, these anchors are in here, but there's nothing in them. And an Avaleth even put them over here for the purpose of, you know, taking advantage of the cliffs. These high ground geysers you can harvest with, you know, advanced workers and such, which actually is now going to be available with the Atlas complete. But he also has a Fountainhead complete. So he could be starting to add mantles. Ahmeds are charging. And they will actually clear out these Bactylisks if neblime isn't careful. In fact, I'm not even sure if he can stop that now because his other Bactyls are so far away. Yeah, he could have maybe microed back a little bit to take less damage, but for the most part, you know, he's in an awkward position. Obviously, the Mavericks have garrisoned that, so they'll zone away the Iziricors. This ministry did get cleared out. There's some Cyprians guarding the ramp. Yeah, it feels like the base layout here for Shambler is really hurting him. And you can see why he was saying Karma's a bitch, because he rolled Terran basically as random, and it's not his favorite race. So he might have at least had some ideas for what to do with the map and other things. But I do feel like he really was able to be in the driver's seat. And neblime plays such a greedy strategy. Guys, there's a tournament this Saturday that, as of the time of recording, the 16th of September, neblime's playing in that tournament. If you're trying to think, what can I do versus neblime? He seems like a strong player. Literally just build units and attack him. I promise you, you will set him off his game. Because this guy is the greediest motherfucker I have seen play CMBW so far. Now, thankfully, the Sentinel is able to take some pot shots. You know, it has 10 range plus the 2 that it gets from the cliff advantage. And, of course, over here you get the same dynamic with the Bactylisks eating those pesky defenses and even killing some Masons in the back with the bounce. So quite spectacular. More Bactylisks taking into, spurring into action. A bunch of idle workers here. Don't worry, neblime. Nobody saw that. And he's starting to cap his geysers as well, so really looking to, continue the front. He's obviously going to be able to build stuff out of the Mutath Spire. He has a Matravel, but he also has a Quazeth somewhere. He built it on his 3rd base, interesting. And his 4th base also has a cap on the way. Excisance, etc. So yeah, at this point, neblime's economy is starting to really, jump out, really scream out at you. He's got 100 workers. He obviously has a whole host of units. And there's even a Matroleth out for the patented Vilgaleth technology here, spawning a whole host of Rokors. Even though it's only got like 4 health or whatever, it finally will go down. It is one of those things where it's like, oh shit, that could have obviously been pretty good. To snipe away. And on top of that, you have the Zephyr cores. The piercing is really hurting the Vilgaleths in particular. If you place them a little bit differently, that obviously could have helped. But you can see here, they're just occupying a lot of the units. If you coincided that with even more units coming in, say Vorva cores instead of Zephyr cores, at least some of them, so that they stayed alive a little bit longer. And then on top of all of that, if you were able to do stuff like, combine that with an attack from somewhere else, I mean, suddenly the phalanxes are attacking each other with the unfriendly splash. You get all sorts of activities. Mutas are out, and they will even destroy this stockade, but that will obviously reveal that a Mutath Spire has been achieved. He also has some Larvosk Cesiants, cheaper on the build space, and etc. for, well, I think just cheaper in general. It has a little bit of a gas cost associated with it, obviously. But cheaper overall than a Hatrosk. Stockade down here just spying out to see what other bases it can find. I mean, I don't mind this strategy now that he's basically pivoted away from Bio. He's starting to build some Mantles, has some Durandals out for the front line. Basically, these are Mecha Achmeks. Obviously, Achmek is superior as a name. But yeah, you can really tell that he's struggling with his base layout. I almost feel like this base should be maybe 25% bigger or something. Obviously, this is manually placed, so... Well, maybe that's not obvious. This is a manually placed thing. Now, his Madrigal is out of position, and his Cyprians are also out of position because nothing is in this lodestone. That would have obviously changed the calculus quite a bit if he had managed to get over there. So he's having a hard time. And his Masons have been wiped out and forced off. Now the Mantles themselves are going to be in a tough spot here. But here comes the Madrigal. He could just dive bomb that and kill it. But he pulls back instead. I mean, okay, maybe he saved a lot of softening up for his Mutas. But we needed to see more Madrigals in play, for sure. And now losing one, maybe both Mantles. Now he ends up just GGing there. Well, not GGing. Expressly not GGing. And he ends up... quitting out. So the Condemned, that's the first name for this map. I didn't see that. That's pretty funny. We'll quickly go through the whole list here. Yeah, I think really what you can see is that there wasn't really that many military units made by neblime for most of the early stages of that game. And I think the Shambler is probably realizing, he's playing random here. He's not really, at this point, we haven't announced Ascension 4, so he's not practicing his Z. He's decided to select Zerg. So he's not practicing that at this point. He's just being random. Maybe looking for castover games, etc., which I, of course, appreciate. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, you really got to watch out for games like that, because neblime definitely should have been bopped earlier in that particular game, and that game should have been like an 8-minute romp or something where it's just like nonstop action, just because neblime wasn't really respecting the kill pressure that Shambler realistically did have. But it doesn't end up happening, so we go on to the next game with neblime in the lead 1-0 so far in the set. Well, now we have a fancy overlay. It's literally the same overlay that I use for Ascension. I might end up overhauling that one at some point. Maybe we can make it even prettier for Ascension number 4. But anyway, for now, we have a current set overlay. Basically, this is what I'll use for when we have a set of games like this, instead of just a one-off. And indeed, neblime leads 1-0 so far in the set. There are 5 games in the set. This video will have 1 and 2. and the subsequent video will have 3, 4, and 5 because the last two are reportedly shorter in runtime. But that's all I know. I don't really request spoilers for these generally. I just want to know the length of the games so that I know going in, how long is a video going to take to record, for example. Mostly just to help me schedule that stuff in. But enough fourth walling. Let's talk about Neblime, who is, of course, the Midnight Green Zerg, lovely color, versus Alice Blue Terran. That's, once again, Shambler Rolling Terran. This time going to go ahead and open up with a Stockade once more. Kind of understanding Neblime's playstyle, but this is game 2. Neblime doesn't know his opponent's race just yet, but should realize that maybe his strategies are, becoming understood. That was a lot more aggressive than we've seen Shambler be in the early stages of these games, and it was played pretty close to after the Infinite Velocity set that we casted recently, where, obviously at that point, he was playing Protoss, the Shambler did not complete the Neblime stomping that he should have been able to do on that last game. And that game 3 was really quite something in that sense. So we will, of course, have Neblime scout out the Terrans. What is he going to do as a result? He has enough for a Hacharosk, but instead opts to the Hydrothen because he had the gas as well. So maybe a little bit of a flummoxed build order. Either way, though, he can definitely do something like that if he wants to. And he has the Droleth still in play. It's going to go ahead and burrow by the intended natural. Actually, funnily enough, it feels like, I don't know exactly how he knew this. Oh, well, never mind. I know how he knew this. You dirty cheater, Shambler. Now, obviously, at some point, we do need to figure out, how exactly to make this not happen, because it's obviously a pretty big map hack. But maybe he can't see it, actually. I think maybe we can see it, but I'm pretty sure what happens is if they exit the rally eventually, at some point, they stop being tracked by it. So, maybe he... or maybe that's what he thinks it is. I don't honestly know. I'm not really quite sure. Because it's definitely not, it's no longer updating now. So maybe we can use that as a way to fix that, because that's obviously a stupid exploit. If you don't know, rally lines are shown by default, as opposed to the order lines that we see for when we select this Mason, or even any of these other units, right? He stemmed for all 5 of those, or all 4 of those Mavericks. I'm not really 100% sure if that was quite necessary. He had another one leading him, obviously, like a linebacker. Either way, there is going to be the same opener here for Neblime. Not interested in innovating. Just going to stick with the old reliable. And he does spout well, I want to say that was 5 Mavericks, obviously, when he spotted it. But did he know that the Ministry went up? He might have seen the Maverick, or the Mason jump up there if he was attentive, right? So maybe he knows that this is a more economic build, and that would explain why he's going to go for the in-base Hacharosk into an expansion. But he's also building, he's building Hydras. He's not building the Skith, it doesn't look like. So the early Skith for scouting, not going to be the case. Never mind, it's already here. That's why I didn't see it. So now the Mavericks are out of position. They're going to have to go and rescue their Mason friend. If the Mason doesn't evacuate, yeah, okay, it will start to try to fall away. It's 3 more hits away from being killed. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Another one, a fresh one, is going to go ahead and be wisely sent over to that Ministry. Watchdog was already completed to stop these kinds of shenanigans from occurring. And actually, this Stockade is blocking a potential Lodestone add-on, so that's something to keep in mind. Shambler, maybe not being the most familiar with this race, you could imagine. I mean, obviously everybody knows that that's the size or whatever, but your instinct isn't necessarily there. So he does say fuck. I'm not quite sure why. Forgot to fix tile. Well, who knows what he means by that? Maybe there's an unbuildable tile somewhere. I can't immediately parse it. I see busted graphical reads, but I don't know if these are maybe this is actually what he's talking about here. But didn't he build over here last game? I think he did. He just busted the tiles over here visually. Maybe that's what he's talking about. Who knows? Anyway, enough about the tiles. CMBW does offer a lot of new things available for players, for mappers who want to make custom maps. You have these north-facing ramps. You have south-facing ramps that can be extended neatly without tile blocks. So you can make pretty-looking maps without needing all of that shit. Now, I did just hear an explosion. What was the explosion? I don't see any... Oh, that was the Ministries in the middle. Okay. I was wondering what that could have been. The Sovaleth, once again, wisely positioned over here. However, Neblime was not expecting to be spotted there. It's just the finicky nature of the Brood War tiles and vision and such. There is a weird bug where you can sometimes see up from the low ground on the very edge of the high ground, and I really wish it didn't work that way. Really wish it was more consistent. Maybe we can even make that more consistent. Who knows? Who knows what we can do? I definitely think that before the tournament we should try to fix the rally thing, because that's egregious if somebody's using that. And sometimes you don't even intend to use it. Like, it just happens. And then you're like, well, I can't unsee this info. One of these Hurricanes is already going to get popped by the Hydras in their advanced positioning. There are no Cyprians with the army, and there are a lot of Izira cores. So this army is not really going to be able to get too much done. However, if it is able to successfully kill off most of these Hydras, which it looks to be the case, we should be able to see... this is before I fix the kill string. That's already been fixed. We should be able to see a hold pretty easily, right? We do have a Goliath out. That is an interesting choice versus Hydra. He might be worried about Skiths or something and starting to build up an anti-air force. But right now, it's going to be all Neblime all day when it comes to the macro side. Now, both players do have an expansion. A lodestone is being constructed at that natural base. And actually, I want to say that maybe Shambler's expansion was faster than his opponent's. He's even at dropping a third. And I don't think any of these Droleths are being rallied to do the same. So yeah, we actually have some aggression coming out from Neblime much faster. And he maintains vision control over in this general neck of the woods. And so that is going to mean mostly just that Shambler doesn't maintain that vision control. Now down by 13 workers. Pretty big deficit to have to climb out of. But there's not really much military, right? After you kill these, there's only the Ovaleth and the Skither Corps. So even though he kills a lot of workers, you can just walk across the map and start pressuring. Now suddenly you have to build so many units, and yeah, he has them, but he doesn't necessarily want to spend that money on military, especially the Vespene. Doesn't necessarily want to spend that. However, that's not going to be Shambler's instinct. He's going to return to his home, try to see what he can do to salvage his reputation. I mean, he's playing a very obvious off race, right? Like, it's not obvious as in like he's really bad at this race per se. It's just this is definitely his worst race. He admits it himself. So, you know, it's good practice for him to anyway, because he can maybe understand what a Terran wants to do against Zerg specifically, or what Zerg can do to make Terran's life hard, so that when he plays against a Terran, he'll be able to do that, you know, in tournament play or competitive play in general. And it's important to do that because even though his group is all Zerg players, presumably he will be able to get out to playoffs. That's the idea anyway. Maybe Enoz and Keen will surprise him, but, you know, we'll see. Maybe we get to cast some Z games ahead of the tournament, and people will see how powerful Shambler's Zerg is. I'm mostly really looking forward to, you know, just seeing a developing sort of set of rivalries, right? We've already seen Shambler against Mystery Meat, not just in the finals, but, you know, they play games versus each other, and they, you know, shit-talk each other sometimes, and it's really cool. And we're starting to see, you know, a lot of games versus Neblime and the Shambler, and Neblime taking games, going from, like, not being able to take many to really taking a lot. And who knows what we're going to see next? You know, is Keen going to be the next conqueror? Is it going to be Connor, who's returned for Ascension number 4, going to be taking place in the Aussie-dominated group of Group C? Well, the Ovaleth is not in vision, apparently. How is it in vision over here, but not over here? You ask me that? I don't know what to say. But either way, we do have some lobotomy mines laid, and there is indeed a third base up and running now for Neblime. So what is he going to do now that he's got this tech up? Starpad, no Atlas. Looking a little bit dire as the third base is starting to get established for the Shambler, but he's definitely behind economically speaking. Now, he does have a better army by a considerable degree, but there's a defensive structure over here that doesn't really factor into that, and obviously the bounce attacks from the Izira cores are going to really massively help. With no more armor rends, the armor does matter, right? We do have 3 armor and only 2 armor pen on something like the Circuit. That will eventually get busted, but now you can just remorph it, and the military units that remaxed in the middle of that, you know, the microcycle or whatever, macrocycle of the units popping out of the eggs is going to be more than enough to thwart this push. Now, if he's not careful, the mine will, of course, stun him, but he doesn't get the most fortuitous mine drag there, so it's only going to stun a single Hydra, but it should be enough cover. However, obviously that Ovaleth had vision of that one, so absolutely slapped. And yeah. Oh, another feature we should add for being able to preview stuff is obviously you can see, you know, the weapon range, but I should be able to show you vision range when I mouse over and hold shift on that. That seems like an obvious thing, so I'll have to note that down. We have a whole host of Hydras coming out. How many Hydras is this anyway? This is just 10 Hydras, not a huge amount. Hydra then is mutating, so we're going to see Bactyl play. And there's nothing in that lodestone once again. With an additional stockade, we have a couple of vestries. Shaman, it's going to be Shaman Goliath, it looks like, with some Cyclops as well for crowd control. Not a bad shout. And some Wraiths for scouting. The second star pad kind of makes me feel like there's going to be a heavy push into Wraiths. There is no anti-air in the natural or the third. Well, actually, it's just in the third. The natural and the main do have it. And the army is on the move. So will they run into these Hydras? That is a question. Because if they do, it's obviously under strength since some of these are turning into Bactyls. But I'm not 100% sure Shambler is going to get lucky with his pathing here. It doesn't look like it. It ships in the night. However, if this force is significant enough, and it is, to burst down the front door, again, neblime doesn't really have a lot of military units, and they are indeed out of whack. The Skither Core will reveal it, and some Hydras flanking on the left-hand side will even pick up on one of the clerics there. I'll trade one of them for that, but here come the Bactylisks. Obviously, they will bounce and do a lot of disruption. However, Shambler is undeterred. He is going to charge up this very small ramp and maybe try to pressure the natural. A whole bunch of Skither Cores are out, and there's only a single... no, there's actually a duo of Cyclops. But is that really going to be enough? He does have cliff advantage versus the Bactylisks. If he's smart with it, he should go ahead and try to fight them. Maybe deploy the Shaman for increased radius of the heal. It's not going to happen just yet. The Hydras are obviously going to be joining the Zeths and melting this force. A big collapse. The Hurricanes were pushed off to the left-hand side, and you kind of wanted to try that attack a little bit more decisively, right? Another leave with no GG. Is Shambler just not interested in typing this time around? Well, maybe he's not interested in being Terran. We'll find out. But of course, this does mean that Shambler is down 0 for 2 in these games. And as we update the match score, it's important to remember that Shambler does sometimes type, but sometimes doesn't type GG. Now, I will say in that game, the big thing was, like, that force definitely was powerful, but it needed to hit a little bit sooner, and it felt like maybe he just didn't really have good enough map control. I think that the couple Izira cores it was just the Izira cores and Hydras that hit the top base, right? That kind of set the Shambler really far behind, and at that point, he wasn't really able to stably expand his macro. Obviously, he's behind in terms of tech again because he's not doing as much pressure. I feel like if we saw Shambler play this as Protoss or Zerg, he would have been able to apply a lot more pressure in the early stages of the game, now that he kind of understands neblime's playstyle. But now, he knows what's coming, he just can't stop it. So if he continues to roll Terran, or maybe rolls a different race but doesn't necessarily, know exactly how to stop that kind of push, it might make neblime's playstyle look like a really good counter to Shambler's. Even so, maybe Shambler will come back. Obviously we did see him trade blows relatively evenly in the last couple of times we've seen these two players, so who knows what's going to happen in the near future in the next Castover video. Well, you'll know when you watch it. See you then.